Good afternoon. Today I'm talking to Morgan Greene about his new book. Good afternoon, Daniel, as I know you. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your newest book?
Of course. My name is Daniel Morgan, and I write under the pseudonym Morgan Greene. I'm an author of crime thrillers, and yeah, I've just brought out a new book. It's called Angel Maker, and it sees my resident detective Jamie Johansson return to her home city of Stockholm in Sweden to track down the killer that her father never caught. The Angel Maker killed girls in the 90s and was swiftly sort of put behind bars by her father, who was a kind of famous detective. But now that the original killer has died, somebody's picked up his mantle, and another life has been claimed. So Jamie's been kind of drawn back to the city now to help sort of pick apart her own past and the original case, and to figure out kind of where he went wrong and whether or not he sort of caught the right man, or if a copycat has emerged. So yeah, it's a kind of fast-paced crime thriller with plenty of twists and turns, plenty of action and blood, and hopefully a killer that you'll never see coming. So, dun dun dun. Probably that sums it up as enthusiastically as I can without kind of dancing or anything.
So this is the fourth in the series, isn't it? But it's the first set in Sweden.
Yeah, so it's kind of a bit difficult, not difficult, but I mean, I'm regarding this as the first book now. This is the first kind of detective Inspector Jamie Johansson kind of novel. It's the one that kind of kicks off the next leg of her story. I wrote three kind of novels with Jamie as a kind of a young detective sergeant set in London, and she was working for the Met. They were the sort of first three novels that she was in, and I always kind of wanted to write this one, Angel Maker. I always wanted to write this story. I'd had it in mind for a while, but I just didn't feel like if I'd have sort of tackled it last year that Jamie would have been ready for it. I didn't think that she was kind of professionally ready for it, personally ready for it, emotionally ready for it, and I don't think I was either. I didn't know enough about the kind of the genre and how to write it, and how I wanted to write it. So I kind of wanted to take a step back and introduce her as a younger, sort of more sort of headstrong detective then, who faces a couple of kind of difficult cases and really has to learn who she is as a person and as a detective. And I knew that the kind of the story was going to kind of lead here and back to Sweden, back to kind of her home city and her home country. But yeah, I kind of really wanted to wait until I felt ready to kind of take her there and give her the sort of story that she deserved. So it's now sort of split, and this is kind of book one in the series, and then the kind of first three novels are a self-contained sort of prequel trilogy that readers can go back and read if they'd like, or they can just kind of carry on and keep reading these and yeah, and pick up Jamie's story from here. So it's the first entry in this kind of series, and yeah, the fourth kind of adventure of Jamie Johansson, I suppose.
And for people that didn't see your first interview, explain why you're so interested with Sweden.
So I've always loved sort of Scandinavian noir and things like that, and I really, really like the kind of the dark, brooding, windswept sort of snowbound kind of setting. I always think that lends itself really, really well to crime. And I actually work for a Swedish company as well, so it's I'm constantly sort of surrounded by these sort of Swedish people and their kind of culture and things. And I watch a lot of sort of Scandinavian noir and like The Bridge and that kind of thing. And there's another one now on called Rebecca Martinson, which is kind of really good as well. And just I don't know, I wanted to write kind of something that just felt a little bit sort of novel as well. And I'm not a big city person either. I'm very much attracted to the kind of the wild and the kind of the open space and things. And I don't know, I really felt like setting English characters in a Swedish kind of setting things, because I wasn't going to write full blown sort of Scandi noir, because I don't speak fluent Swedish and I don't kind of live there, so it felt a little bit kind of bold to do that. But then also, I don't continuing to write in that vein felt a little bit sort of outside my box as well. So I kind of wanted to of kind of British crime and Scandi noir and sort of bring them together in a way that hopefully feels kind of a little bit novel um, for readers and gives flavour of kind of Scandi noir, but also then sort of delivers a British sort of character and a British feeling, because obviously it's written in native English rather than written in Swedish and then translated. So I don't know, it was kind of, I feel almost like a coalescence of elements. It was me kind of bringing my experiences and my personal sort of enjoyment in terms of what I like to read and watch, and then sort of taking the experience I gained from writing the first three novels and bringing those together to try and create something that felt a little bit sort of new but familiar at the same time. And yeah, and I was lucky enough to have kind of the help of my colleagues and things to advise me on the things that I wasn't kind of fully you know up to speed with in terms of kind of Swedish culture and places and names and pronunciations and translations and that kind of thing. So yeah, I used all the tools at my disposal to kind of try and do my very best to transport the reader to Sweden.
Which you did.
Hopefully so.
Yeah, just reading it made me feel cold, like just talking about the snow and stuff all the time. Oh.
Yeah, well, the next one is no better. I mean, it's gonna be a cold story. The next one as well. Then the third one is gonna be set in the summer, so you'll be okay.
In the first one, Jamie is just a visiting detective, but assuming she stays in Sweden, is she going to be more restricted by the rules if she joins the force or whatever it's called?
Yeah, so I think they kind of she's going to stay as a Met detective, so she'll retain her kind of detective inspector kind of mantle, but she'll be on an official loan, I suppose, while she's there. And because as you know from the kind of the last pages from the epilogue, that she's got some unfinished business that she needs to attend to, and she can't really leave Sweden behind now. So she's going to be there for a while, I think. And people seem to kind of from the early sort of feedback I've had, really enjoy kind of Jamie and Detective Wick's sort of back and forth. They sort of they're developing a relationship, and I hope, yeah, that they can continue to blossom into a more sort of dynamic duo. And yeah, and I don't really know what sort of Jamie's future holds, where she's going to go. Or what she's going to do, and I don't really want to commit myself to kind of having her in one place forever. She's a rolling stone, and I'll follow her wherever she goes, wherever her story decides to take her. Like, so at one point, I had an email from somebody who asked, is she going to join the kind of the armed response team, because that was kind of an element of the first three novels. And I said, nothing's off the table. Now she's in Sweden, maybe Interpol, maybe Europe, maybe somewhere else, America. I don't really know. I like her as a character. I'm going to take her as far as she'll go, and then and then I'll probably allow her to live happily ever after once she's paid her dues.
Yeah, she would have been through the mill by then.
Yeah,
Um, if you were to give any of your characters their own story, who would you choose?
From this book specifically, or from kind
From
of.
any? Yeah, from any.
So for me, it would be Amy Brock. So she's the other female detective that kind of makes an appearance in books 2 and 3 of the kind of the prequel trilogy. So she has an interesting backstory that I kind of don't dig into, because I always kind of felt like if I was going to do a spin-off or a different series, that she would head that up. So I think that would be a really kind of that would be a direction I'd like to go in if I wanted to explore a different side of sort of thriller that wasn't kind of quite so police focused. But otherwise, I think the obvious choice is Jamie's father. I really wanted to. I've always kind of wanted to write the spin-off series as well that kind of charts his early days in kind of the Stockholm police, back when it was very much more of a kind of a brutish time, and there wasn't so much red tape, and there wasn't CCTV to kind of capture all your wrongdoings. And if you read the book, he was he was a rather rough and ready man. He'd carried a knife on his belt and was quick to anger and quick to violence. And it's, although that kind of almost paints a kind of one-dimensional picture of him, I hope that Angel Maker really kind of shows the different sides to his character. And I don't know, I'd like to take him back, I think, to those sort of early days when Jamie was a young child, or just before kind of Jamie was born, maybe, and explore the journey that kind of made him into the man that we talk about in the novel itself. So it's I think there's a lot of different kind of elements that a lot of different routes that we could go down, but I think those two would be my first two choices.
Yeah, that would be cool. Especially, yeah, Jamie's dad, because her mum messed him up pretty much by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's kind of their relationship sort of plays a backdrop, and I think it's kind of why. Sorry, it's getting really dark where I am. Let me just knock this on. I got a light above my desk. That's better. Just went really dark all of a sudden. I was looking at myself, and I was all kind of like shrouded in mystery and darkness. But it's yeah, I mean, it plays into the first kind of three novels a bit as well. And Jamie's mother is actually more present in those novels, and she speaks to her. I mean, she's just more of a almost like a phantom in Angel Maker, where she's mentioned and talked about, but not sort of spoken to. And in the first kind of three novels, she does kind of make more of an appearance, and you really get to see more of Jamie and her mother's kind of relationship, which was a kind of different thing that I wanted to sort of explore in sort of this one. I wanted to focus more on her father as a man, not as her kind of projection, really. And yeah, she. I mean, they had their troubles, but yeah, Jamie's mother didn't handle some things very well. Her father didn't handle some things very well, and Jamie was caught in the middle, which is why she's very much the way she is, and isn't able to hold down a relationship, or isn't interested in having children herself. So it's yeah, there's a lot of family dynamics going on there.
If you were to be transported into Angel Maker, what would you say to your characters?
Run away very, very fast. It's very dangerous and cold as well. No, well, I mean, it all depends at what point. I mean, if I knew the ending, I'd obviously tell them first so that they could, not, not do it. But I don't know. I think it's a tough one. What would I tell my characters? To lighten up, probably, because they seem very, very moody and broody at once, and neither Jamie nor Wick have a sense of humor really in any sort of in any way. They're very kind of I don't know, very, very work focused, and hopefully the kind of as they develop and come together, I want to see them kind of find a sense of humor and a sense of kind of patter and that kind of thing. But I want them to really earn that. It's I find a lot in crime novels that there's a lot of one-liners get cracked, a lot of detectives crack jokes and that kind of thing, and it's great. And I think that there's very much a need for that to kind of balance the darkness and the kind of the nastiness sometimes of these novels. But for me, I want Jamie and Wick to find that for themselves. I want them to really earn their own kind of strange, weird back and forth. But yeah, they could both serve to lighten up a little bit, I think, in the meanwhile. So it's yeah, probably that.
Wick's got a soft side though, hasn't he? You can see
Yeah,
right near the end he's got a little soft spot for Jamie.
just a vulnerable, fragile man, and he's been he's lost his long time partner. His and she's kind of she's gone to start a family and to kind of transfer to a safer line of work, and it's left him kind of out in the cold really a little bit. So it's yeah, I think he's just wounded. He's a wounded lion. Well, he thinks he's a wounded lion. I think he's probably more like a pussycat than a lion, but we won't tell him that.
No.
Probably stop talking about my characters as people. So
It's pretty normal, don't worry, it's fine. So, do you have any plans of how far you're going to take the series? How many more books you're going to write?
I really like writing in kind of triplets or kind of sort of quatrains almost. So it's going to be kind of this book and then another book kind of a few months after, and then another book a few months after, and then I think I've got three kind of stories that are going to chart from now into the spring and then into the summer of this year, and then I think in the fourth book, then Jamie will finally go after the case that kind of begins in the epilogue, really, in a concerted way. While she'll be working on it in the background in the kind of the other books, there'll be that sort of thread running through it, but not enough that it will kind of make it difficult for somebody to kind of jump into to any of the books. Because I really want each book to have its own distinct feel. Like you could just pick one up and enjoy it, and then I think in book 4, then I'm gonna finally kind of deliver that case that it's going to be on Jamie's mind, and then after that, then I think there'll be another kind of period of rest for her and reflection, and then either she'll come back to Sweden or go back to the UK, or like I said, maybe kind of pursue something else. But when I'm writing each book, I mean, I don't even know who the killer is myself. When I start writing a book, I just kind of have my cast of characters, and I'm like, okay, who's it going to be? And then I've got a big kind of like twister wheel on my wall, and I just sort of write all their names and spin it, and then I'm like, oh, it's you. Okay, I got to figure out how you did it then, and I don't actually. It's I like to keep things as fluid as I can, and each book evolves as I write it, I feel, and each um, and each story evolves, and the series evolves as well, and I like to be able to change things as I go, and adapt, and allow Jamie to kind of you know react to the story herself, and I'm happy always to change the next story to fit more with kind of how Jamie is progressing in both my head and hopefully in the pages as well. So forever is the short answer, and the long answer was that sort of minute and a half sort of waffle.
Did you find it more difficult to name your characters when you said it in Sweden?
I actually had all the help of my colleagues, and I just said, like, these are all the characters that I sort of that I want. Here are a couple of kind of names I've been playing with. What do you think? Can you help me kind of name some other ones? And then they just went straight to Facebook, and two of the girls I worked with, they were like, oh, like you need some names for like some 50s men and some 60s men. They were like, let me just go to my dad's Facebook, and then they just kind of started copy and pasting names of their father's friends, and I was like, do any of these men read crime? Are they likely to read this book? And they're like, no, why? And I was like, because if I name a serial killer after them, I said I don't want them to be offended or like weirded out.
Did none of them want
yeah.
their names included?
Sorry.
Did none of them want their names included?
Yeah, I mentioned the girls that really helped me out sort of at the back of the book in the acknowledgements as well. But yeah, some of the I kind of stole first names and last names, and then you can always just go to the writer's go-to, which is to like Google Swedish surnames, and then you just go with your eyes closed down the list, and then you just stop randomly, and you're like, yes, okay, that's your second name now, and that's how you kind of name characters, or you just sort of keep saying them out loud in different combinations of first and second names until you find something that sounds um, memorable or easy on the tongue, because that's something that I was sort of hyper aware of as well, was making sure that the names were sort of classically Swedish, recognizably so to the ear, but also not so difficult to pronounce that you're going to forget who they are. Because I mean, that's always an issue, I think, whenever I read sort of a Scandinavian novel. I'm just like, I can't remember what this fucking guy's called. Flipping guy's called. Sorry.
Yeah, they're not too bad to remember. Although I couldn't remember when we first started speaking, but that's me.
Yeah.
That's not your fault.
Have you read any of the Ragnar Jonasson books?
No, I don't think so.
No, they're the Dark Iceland series, and I mean, there are some very difficult to remember character names in there. There's a lot of accents and things, and sometimes you'll talk about a character, and I'm like, who is this? Who is this person? And then I have to go back then and reread because it's somebody who was introduced before that I just have forgotten their name because it's very complex. But I think
I read War and Peace, and they were all Russian names, and I had no clue at all. It took a while to get used to who they were.
yeah. I mean, Tolstoy is famous. But I mean, if you read Anna Karenina, there's like 3 guys and all named like Ovronsky, Oblonsky, and Gronsky or something, and there's like 3 really close names together. And I thought they were all the same family. I didn't realize. I didn't know what was going on for about 400 pages. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't plan on tackling any of those sorts of books ever again. I've done one, that's it. That's enough.
yeah, you climb one of those novels, a Russian kind of, a Russian literary, I don't even know, tome, doorstop, and then one is enough, I think.
Yeah, that's fine. I've done. I wanted to do it. I've done it. That's it. Never ever again.
honest. Yeah, I bet you didn't read that one in a day, did you?
No, I did. That took me a month. Yeah, I was at uni at the time as well, you know. Minor details. Um, since we last spoke, what's the best book you've read?
The best book I've read. I finished The Chestnut Man, which was okay. I mean, it's quite difficult. I don't actually like I read a lot, but I don't finish a lot of books because I'm reading like 4 books at the moment. So I'm reading Dune. I'm reading the Puppet Show. M.W. Craven did the Puppet Show. Puppet. Yeah,
One
I thought it was.
of my favorite authors,
So I'm
characters,
like
but
I'm about a quarter of the way into that. I'm about, I don't know, a fifth of the way into a Chris Carter book. I'm reading Orange of the Priory of the Orange Tree as well, by Samantha Shannon, which is like a big sprawling fantasy novel. I'm reading Dune. I'm still reading Dune. I just finished I Am Legend, actually. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. I'll say I Am Legend. So, which is about vampires, really weirdly, because like you think zombies or something
yeah,
based on like the movie. It's actually like full blown vampires. So it's really good though.
yeah. I don't know how you could pick up either a Chris Carter book or a Mike Craven book and not finish them because they are both just wow, especially Chris Carter.
Um, I don't. I genuinely think it's probably just because I'm so fatigued by writing. I just write all day, and I do nothing but read and write all day long. Not just my own work for my business, and when I'm doing the copywriting and things. I'm writing continually, but I'm also then having to read really boring technical documents about lots of clothing and that kind of thing, or I'm having to like trawl through web pages and read like descriptions and read features lists and all sorts of things, and that's really boring. And then when I do work for Grindstone, I'm mostly just reading people's work, and the whole reason we started that was to kind of give people a fair chance and to make sure that their work was being well considered. So I sit down and I read that, and that just kind of really tires you out because you're not just reading it for enjoyment, you're reading it with like an analytical eye as well. And then when I get into bed, I lie there and I pick my Kindle up and I'm just sort of staring at it, and after about 10 pages I'm just not taking any of it in. So I read sort of in little increments, and I've got sort of a stack of books on my bedside table. I'm like, oh, what do I want to read 5 pages of tonight, and then fall asleep with?
You haven't dropped it on your face and given yourself a broken nose or anything yet, though.
I bounced off the top of my head. I was holding it up like that, and it just fell off and hit me on the head. And then I was like, okay, I definitely need to go to sleep now. So yeah, I did.
Yeah.
That's why I can't sleep because I had a big line down my head.
What's your biggest fear, and would you ever write about it in a book?
Um, Spiders. No. It's difficult to say. Either spiders or being underwater and trapped in a cave. Like that freaks me out. I don't understand how people want to go caving like in the air, let alone like diving and caving. It really freaks me out. But I hadn't really thought about it. But now that you said that, I'm gonna put Jamie in a cave under the water at some point in the next 2 to 3 books. So yeah. So thank you for that. No, I will write about that, and it's going to be horrific for both me and her. So I can't wait. I'm rather a sadist.
Awesome. I can't wait to read that then.
Yeah,
I think.
maybe. Yeah. So
Yeah,
no,
that's fine.
bless her. She really gets the crap beaten out of her a lot. So I mean, in books like 2 and 3 especially, she gets the yeah, she does have a bit of a kick in both of those books, really. So, but she comes back stronger, and
Yeah, she's pretty kick ass. She's fine. I'm sure she can take it.
oh, yeah, she's a strong lady, and yeah, no, I like Jamie a lot. I mean, I never thought I'd. She's the first kind of female lead that I've really tackled, and I read a couple of books with kind of female leads because I wanted to write one, and I just for inspiration really, and I just kind of came away from reading these kind of like 2 or 3 books on the bounce just with a list of things that I didn't want her to be rather than a list of things I did want her to be. So I kind of just wrote her to not be a bunch of things, and she's turned out as she has, and then she's sort of really developed as we've gone along now into somebody that feels very real to me. So it's I'm looking forward to taking her story into the great unknown.
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting that three of your biggest characters were women and only one was male. And then you've got Jamie's dad that was male, that was kind of bad. And then you've got Wick that's miserable, but the women are pretty
Mm.
awesome. I thought that was quite cool.
Mm. And I, it's, and I read, I did my degree in literature, and I read in I can't turn off kind of the analytic part of my brain, and it really bugs me in in stories and in movies and things as well, where people write female characters and they give them like a lack of agency, and they can't seem to kind of do the things that they need to do until there's a man there to help them. Or what's worse is when you have a good character and a good female character kind of develops, and then as soon as like a male character comes on the scene, that they lose all their agency, and that the man takes the spotlight and they seem to take a back seat or just lose their ability to kind of do things. And it's just, and yeah, and I, and that was one thing as well, that somebody posted a review for Bare Skin, and it was just like, and it kind of hinted at the fact that Jamie was just sort of being kind of insubordinate, and she's got like a domineering male boss and this and that, and she gets kind of like chided, and because she's a woman. I'm like, it's not because she's a woman, it's because she's making terrible decisions because she's inexperienced at her job. That has nothing to do with her gender. And I really took issue with the fact that somebody like picked up on that but misconstrued it in that way. And I'm like, I don't want her to, like, as far as I'm concerned, Jamie is not genderless, but like, it doesn't matter whether she's a man or a woman. But like, I wanted to write her as a woman because I wanted to have that kind of that very difficult relationship between her and her mother, and the strained relationship between her and her father. And that was the kind of the dynamic that I built her character around. And it doesn't really matter to me whether she was kind of a man or a woman. And I hope I don't, and please tell me if I do, but I hope I don't kind of stray into that kind of that trap of gendering my characters with those kind of classic tropes. It's like, I hope that Jamie and Wick really have that sort of that dynamic where they both strong characters, and they make their own decisions. And when Jamie goes to see Annika Lillyhall, Wick is really not happy with that, but it's not because she's a woman and she's disobeying him because she's a man. It's because he's a control freak. It's like, if anybody disobeys him, he wants that. So it's and I wanted to create both good and bad characters in both the male and the female kind of gender sphere. And it's important to me that there is this kind of element of dynamicism, is that even a word? Dynamicness.
It is now. Yeah, it's fun. We'll go with it.
In all the characters, and it's important to me to do that, to kind of to break away from those classic kind of tropes and those classic sort of bad stereotypes and those bad ways of writing. And I think I'm very lucky to have studied it in a kind of in an environment that has allowed me to really not just read something and feel like the female character is being hard done by, but be able to kind of identify why that is. And then when I'm writing my own work, then to be able to apply those things that I've learned, and hopefully create characters that feel real and feel complex and have their kind of their shortcomings and their good points as well. And hopefully grow on you as people, rather than as just kind of very shallow caricatures of you know of other characters, of stock characters. So,
Yeah, I would say you nailed that.
oh, good,
You
good. I
don't,
haven't.
yeah.
As I kind of finished that rant, then I was like, what was the question again? I don't feel like because I feel like I kind of just sort of started answering it and then veered off wildly in another direction. So I'm really sorry.
That's good. If you feel strongly about it, then that's good. It's good to see. Um, I've noticed that your newest book has been getting quite a lot of reviews and stuff. Have you gained more readers since we last spoke?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's due massively in part to kind of the support of sort of you and a couple of other kind of crime groups as well, all of whom have been so welcoming and so positive and things. And that's always it's because I continually see when when I'm on the groups and things where people say, oh, who would you recommend to read next? Or I've just picked up this book and and I'm really loving it. Or I got this on recommendation, and people comment saying like, oh, you should read J.D. Kirk, you should read M.W. Craven, you should read Tony Ford, you should read this person, you should read that person. And I'm and I think you start to gain lots and lots of readers when you become one of those authors that gets recommended and things. So I think I think I have gotten sort of a wider readership from just my presence there and things, and hopefully I'm more than happy. I think I said this last time as well, to sort of pay my dues and to really earn those readers, because I think if you're going to want to be one of those readers or one of those writers that's recommended in a group, that when somebody says, oh, can anybody recommend a good crime writer, I think if you're going to be a name that comes to somebody's lips, I think you've got to earn that. And if I'm going to be posted alongside the JD Kirks and the MW Cravens, I really want to feel like I deserve to be there. So I think I've gained a few, and I really hope that the people who signed up to be advanced readers, they enjoyed it enough, and I hope to continue to gain a bigger readership as I go, really. And it's a slow process that you can only sort of you can fast forward it by throwing money at ads, but it's just a very, I think it's got to be organic. It's got to be, you've got to just keep writing good books that stand out to people. You've got to be one of those authors that when people finish one of your books, they want to go and read another one immediately. And then when somebody says, oh, who's a good author, they go, oh, Morgan Greene. And I want I want to continue to sort of pursue that if I can, and just continue to write books that people really really love. And yeah, it's I think I've got a few of those from the emails and things that I've had back from some of the advanced readers who seem to really enjoy it. So I hope it continues to kind of grow on this path.
I hope so too. You deserve it.
Thank you very much.
We were talking before about you starting a podcast. So do you want to tell people about that?
Sure. So this has kind of come off the back of Grindstone, which is the company that I run that offers writing competitions to aspiring writers, and we connect them with agents and publishers and things. The biggest the biggest winner we've had, her name is Nikki May. She's now represented by Catherine Cho, who's a good sort of colleague, professional sort of colleague of ours. She works on most of our competitions as a judge, and she's a phenomenal agent. And she works with Madeline Milburn, who are a massive agency, and she's gone on now to sort of land a massive publishing deal with Doubleday and HarperCollins US for like 7 figures or something. So that kind of journey that she's gone on, and sort of us talking to her and then talking to the agents, and then me talking to my editor, and we're all in this kind of sphere of all this insider kind of, not insider knowledge, but you're kind of talking about things with no trepidations, because I think when you're a writer or when you're a reader, all you see is sort of what's coming out, what's hitting the shelves, and you never kind of get to look behind the curtain. And I feel very very privileged to be sort of in that position with kind of with an editor, and to have agents that I can just sort of talk to and drop an email to and just sort of chat books about, and that kind of thing, and to read so much work coming through as well through Grindstone. I just feel like there's so much information and so much kind of insight that we can kind of really put out there and lay bare for everybody, just to kind of get an idea of what's actually kind of going on, behind the scenes, behind the book, what goes into it. And I was chatting to my editor, Rebecca, and she was sort of, we were actually chatting about kind of something kind of really weird and meta, and we were just having a long conversation about kind of the way point of view interacts with kind of reader perception of a novel and that kind of like weird stuff. And we were just like, this would just be interesting, I'm sure, to kind of to writers and to some readers as well. And and then we kind of started talking about other things we'd like to talk about, and we were like, we should just do a podcast. Like I've had the idea for like a couple of years. I was like, let's just do it, but you'd be like really good to have on, and we'll just kind of talk about the kind of niche things that perhaps readers don't think about either, or writers don't think about, but that make huge impacts. It's like, what different perception does a reader have when they pick up a book and it's written in first person or it's written in third person? How does that affect the perception of your book? And like, why are some genres more kind of suited to third person rather than first person. Like, you don't read a lot of crime novels in first person. Like, you just don't. You don't see them. But then when you read young adult fantasy, you read a lot of that in first person. And same with like present tense and past tense. So that was the kind of thinking that we had, that we had a lot of knowledge between us, and we had a lot of contacts, her in publishing and me, and sort of with agents and that kind of thing. And we just wanted to really create a podcast, not so much about authors or writers, not so much about books, but more about writing and the way that writing works in the industry, in the real world, and the way that kind of the craft sort of works, and how it all contributes to this kind of global landscape of literature, and to have a podcast that isn't afraid to really be niche and dig into that kind of stuff, because I think there's a lot of podcasts out there that kind of do author interviews and things, and I think they can be really, really great to listen to. And I listened to one that's, I'm going to forget the name of it now. It's going to be really embarrassing. It's two Scottish guys anyway, and they do the Right Gear notebook, and they speak to a bunch of authors, and it's really cool. And I love listening to that, but they're already really good at that, so I don't want to do that as well. So we're kind of, we want to do something more niche and more focused on sort of the kind of the meta discussions and that kind of thing of what's going on behind the scenes, and the mechanics of how it all works. And yeah, it's going to be super, super boring for anybody who doesn't care about that kind of stuff. But for the very, very small kind of pocket of people who are like, oh yes, I would like to know how past tense versus present tense affects like the sort of immediate knee-jerk perception of a book that I'm reading. For those people, it'll be really, really interesting, I hope. So that's yeah. As you can see, I'm very excited about it because I don't really have much going on in my life. I'm locked away in this room for 80 hours a week, so I'm like, oh, words.
Well, if you don't come out of the pandemic with a podcast, then you've failed the pandemic. So it's the done thing. You've got to go for it.
Yeah. I started baking bread and cakes and stuff, and then started putting on lots of weight. So I was like, okay, well, I need a hobby that's like, not going to be detrimental to me. I need to like podcast instead. That's safer option, I think. But,
yeah.
Who knows?
If you were going to have a superhero power, what would you have?
Ooh. Teleportation, I think, probably, because there used to be stop time, but like it's like, oh, you'd stop time. Oh, you're a bit of a creep, aren't you? And I'm like, what? I'm like, what? No. They're like, yeah, it's okay. I don't judge. I'm like, what fictitious theoretical like brush are you tarring me with now? So now I'm like, teleportation is
like, if you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 things would you want with you?
3 things that I want on a desert island. Is this where I'm supposed to say, I want like the complete works of Shakespeare? No, I'm like, no, I want an axe. I want a tarp, and there's a correct answer to this: an axe, a tarp, and flint. Sorry, those are the 3 things you want: an axe, a tarp, and a flint, and everything else you can survive with. And so I can I can use the axe. I can like write novels on trees and stuff, so it's fine. So.
Okay, if you say so.
Like on the beach, it'll just be like, instead of help, it'll just be like a long line of crows all across the beach. So when a plane is flying over, like, what the hell?
It's like, no, I'm at a really important bit. Go away.
I'm like, don't save me, no, go away.
Helicopter comes and just blows it all away.
Yeah. But no, to be honest, no, I'd probably write, please leave me alone. This island is COVID free. So it's
yeah. Assuming that any out there are, and if there are, I'd like to go there.
Oh yeah, no, I'm pretty sure like it must be easy for places like Tahiti or Polynesia, or like those kind of very, very small islands. They can just, if people come towards them, they just like go away now. Like it's it's safe here. It's not like what you do.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
Gosh, the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me. Most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me. I've fallen down a lot. Like I'm a good faller. I slip a lot in front of people. I don't know really. That's a tough one. I mean, without saying things that probably aren't family friendly, I don't really know where I'm supposed to go with this.
Well, most boys so far, their embarrassing stories involve nakedness of some description. So if that helps, then
Um,
the ladies not so
yeah.
much, weirdly.
Well, yeah. Let's. I remember I was away on holidays with my brother and some of his friends, and one of his friends I didn't really like, and he dressed very oddly as far as I was concerned. It was a very strange sort of sense of dress. It was a very tight shirt that was made from string, with a very low V neck, and a very bronze chest, and very tight jeans with all rips in them, and kind of strange kind of like loafers with a little Cuban heel on them. And I don't know, he's rather odd, but he thought he was very stylish. I mean, he was a model. um, and I remember he was sort of telling this really annoying story while we were all sort of sitting around the apartment, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm going to go for a cigarette now," and then he went outside for a cigarette, and he sort of closed the door behind him, and I went, "Oh, what a flipping douchebag that guy is! Have you seen the way he's dressed as well?" And it turns out that the windows were open, so he heard me, and then stuck his head in and went, "I hear you," and I was like, "Oh God!" So that was kind of embarrassing. I think so. That's probably the most embarrassing thing that happened to me while my clothes were on, and I'm not really looking to explore any of the ones that were off. So
Okay,
that's
I'm
okay.
totally asking you when I'm stopping the recording about those.
Yeah, you can do. I mean, they're all the usual ones. I'm sure lots of alcohol and not very many clothes. And
Yeah, actually, the other guys, no alcohol was involved. I think for at least two of them. Yeah,
no, if
at
you want to
least
get my shit, you've got to get at least 3 drinks in me.
noted. I nearly made you spit your drink out there, didn't I?
Very nearly.
Oh, I love it. It's fun. I'm evil.
Yeah.
Um, so what's coming next for you?
Book-wise, the next story for Jamie is going to be called Rising Tide. That will be out hopefully at the end of May. It's going to be a bit different. So again, I was speaking to my editor about kind of the nuanced difference between locked room mysteries and closed circle mysteries and that kind of thing. And I had an idea then to kind of have a murder on board a drilling platform, an oil drilling platform in the kind of the remote Norwegian Sea, and yeah, and then Jamie and Wick get this call, and there's going to be a crew changeover. There's the 6 month shift. So basically, you have a group of engineers. They're there for 6 months. They come home for 6 months. So it's 5 days until this kind of crew switch over. Everybody's looking forward to it, and then suddenly somebody's murdered and somebody's disappeared as well. And Jamie and Wick get a call, and they've got to go out, and they're on the clock. They've got 5 days to solve this crime. There's a host of likely suspects. Everybody's rough and ready. Nobody's what they seem. Everybody's got secrets. There's people from all walks of life and all kind of nationalities. Everybody's got a motive. Everybody's got something to gain from it, and they've got 5 days to solve the crime. Except the killer doesn't want to be caught, and he's prepared to go to any lengths to prevent them from doing that. So not only are they racing against time, they're also trying to outwit a killer on his home turf. So it's the ultimate game of cat and mouse, where yeah, there's no police in the sea, just oil and blood and lots of it. That's the kind of tagline on the bottom of the blurb. And I'm sure the blurb that I agonized over at the back of Angel Maker sums it up a lot better than that. So, but yeah, that's the general kind of gist of it. It's very going to be claustrophobic and confined. And again, I'm hoping to sort of take what I've learned and take the good elements of Angel Maker and then kind of transport it to a new setting, and kind of put a new twist on it. And I hope that every novel is going to have that kind of slightly twisted kind of feeling. It's going to kind of build on that action, build on the kind of the suspense, and just kind of introduce hopefully this kind of tightly wound feeling of claustrophobia that'll make everybody bite their nails and sit on the edge of their seat, and point fingers at all the wrong sort of suspects, because that's what we endeavor to do, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, I don't
That's
have any more questions for you, unless there's anything else that you want to tell us about that I haven't asked.
Um, no, I think we're all good. Anybody who watches this, if you want to ask me any questions, just drop something down in the comments. I'm happy to answer it. If you haven't read Angel Maker, please do. I hope you'll enjoy it. You can check out some reviews on Goodreads and on Amazon. And yeah, and then hopefully once Amazon are able to kind of send a couple of copies my way, and I finally get my hands on them, I'm gonna give away some signed copies as well as a couple of e-copies if anybody kind of wants an electronic copy. But yeah, just keep your eyes peeled, and yeah, just when I've got the copies and I'm going to give them away, I'll put a post up if that's okay with you, and
Of course.
yeah, we'll hopefully give away some books, because I mean the name of the group is interviews and giveaways, and I've done two of the first and none of the second, so let's set that right. So it's yeah, but so yeah, if anybody wants a signed copy, then you know keep your eyes peeled, and I'll post the details when I know how to do it. All COVID safety measures will be followed, I assure you of that. So I'll
Awesome. Thank you very much.
pleasure.